Welcome back, everybody. This is Pascal from Neutrality Studies, and I'm joined today again by a retired professor from the University of Missouri and an associate at the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation, Professor Stephen Starr. Steve, welcome back.
Well, it's great to be back.
It's wonderful having you because you prepared another presentation for us. Let me show that right here. Yes, it's on the screen now because you're going to give us an update on what is happening with the war against Iran. Please take it away.
Okay, thank you. Well, as everyone knows that's viewing, we've got a war raging, and it's really a concern to me that the war is being guided by fundamentalist Zionist Christians in the White House. It's more of a crusade than a war at some level. But in the last 4 weeks, the U.S. has made more than 10,000 military strikes on Iran. They've hit 190 medical centers, and 80,000 civilian structures have been hit, and that 12 hospitals have also been destroyed in Iran. So this is not just an attack on Iranian military facilities. Let's see here. Can I get this? There we go.
Yeah, and on this picture, you were showing us you were showing us your Secretary of War, right, and his insignia, and Alex Donald Trump.
Trump was having a session in the Oval Office, and Hexbeth has got the Crusaders tattoo on his chest. So
yeah, he literally the Secretary of War of the United States has a Crusaders tattoo on his chest. Like this is not a joke. This is not some kind of irony or whatnot. This is just what reality is.
That's right, and it's frightening to me. It's we complain about Iran being a theocracy, but it seems like we have the same thing going in the White House right now.
We do.
So contrary to what you may be hearing on the mainstream media, the United States is not winning the war. Iran is. Iranian attacks have forced the U.S. to withdraw from 13 military bases around the Gulf. We only have one operational base left in northern Iraq. You know, this missile and drone attacks have done this, and it seems that the U.S. didn't even prepare for these. I heard today that the Pentagon's in a hurry trying to send concrete shelters, bunkers to the Middle East. And along with the destruction of these bases, Iran has comprehensively destroyed U.S. and Israeli radar systems. And this has blinded U.S. and Israeli air defense systems to long-range missile attacks. You know, Israel only has 1 minute warning now for any attacks that hit its cities and its military bases. In addition to that, U.S. and Israel are running out of interceptor air defense missiles. They don't work very well, but if they run out of them, then they won't work at all, obviously. And the THAAD radar and Patriot missiles they've been shipped out of South Korea, which is, I'm sure what South Korea wasn't happy about this, to be sent to the Middle East to replace those that are destroyed. But, you know, they can't replace the high altitude UHF radar system that was destroyed in Qatar. And that's required for the initial identification of high altitude objects coming in, warheads. So these THAAD and Patriot missiles are still not going to be very effective. What's going on? Why, you know, even though they've had 80,000 strikes, or 10,000 strikes, you know, look at why. That Iran has built a whole series of underground missile cities all across the country. Their country is the size of Western Europe. And the U.S. clearly didn't know where these are, and they're not able to knock them out. And why is that? Because they're buried in granite. Well, this granite is actually 25 times harder than concrete. You know, this is a diagram of one of the missile cities, and you know, it's 500 meters deep or 1,500 feet deep inside the mountain. It's got multiple exits, and it's got an internal railway system, and the missiles are transported to tunnels. They pop up to the surface, they're launched, and the blast doors close, and you know, they don't have time to identify and hit those targets.
Where do we have this information from? I mean, this is a quick.
Yeah, it was published. Iran provided some of this. In fact, this video here, it shows this is in that underground missile city.
یکی از صدها شهر موشکی نیروی هوافضای سپاه پاسداران
I
انقلاب اسلامی.
don't need that video, audio, but these tunnels go for miles. This is not some simple structure down there. And they've been preparing for this war for 30 years. They anticipated this, and that's why They knew they couldn't compete with our Air Force, so they built missiles and drones, and we're apparently unprepared for that.
What is this? Is this real or is this a AI generated video?
This is real. I believe it's real.
Can you put the audio up again? Was that Arabic or was that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's
و مایع را
I mean, they do this to inform their own people as well.
آقای خیبرشکن قدر اچ سجیل اماد حاج قاسم
Wait, isn't this Hebrew?
So, anyway, I think hopefully your viewers get the picture.
Yeah.
And what have these missiles been doing? I mean, they destroyed 30 to 40% of the Gulf refining capacity. It's been damaged or it's offline. And 11 million barrels per day of refining capacity have been lost. And 20% of the global liquid natural gas production has also been lost. 70% of the LNG capacity in Qatar was lost from the Iranian strikes. And it'll take 3 to 5 years to restore this production. So this is a structural issue now. The global strategic petroleum reserves, only cover about 20 days of lost oil flow from the Gulf. And you can't speed up tankers. They're coming across. They can only go across the ocean so fast. But after the ones that are en route arrive, there'll be no more. But it's just done to the oil price. Well, we went from $60 to $70 a barrel to, I think today it was over $100 or around $100 a barrel, and it's going to be, well over $100 up to $200 a barrel.
Right.
And that builds inflation to everything because fuel costs are built into every manufacturing or agricultural, activity. This will impact food production because about 30% of the urea that comes out of the Gulf, and that's what they use for nitrogen fertilizers in our fields here in Missouri and all around the world. And like I said, this is a structural multi-year damage. This cannot be fixed quickly. So this is what has happened already through this insane war. This shows Tehran after Israel hit a refinery there in Iran. That's what it looked like.
Yeah, because this was oil being rained down back
Yeah,
in the city of Tehran after it evaporated into the skies, right? It's absolutely it's a ecological catastrophe what the U.S.-Israeli coalition is doing to Iran.
That's right. The other presentation I did, we showed it through the oil running through the drains and on fire in the city. So Iran hit back. This is a gigantic oil refinery in Saudi Arabia. They also hit the world's largest oil refinery in the United Arab Emirates.
дрон прилетел по нефтехранилищу.
Wow.
And the U.S. then struck Iran's South Pars gas field. That's the largest gas field in the world.
This is the South Pars gas field attack?
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus.
So then Iran struck back, and they hit Qatar's gas field, and that was when 70% of the capacity was destroyed there. We're not seeing this in our news, as far as I can tell. I had to search through the internet to find these videos, but these are not AI videos. This is the real thing.
This is for sure real, yeah.
So meanwhile, the U.S. is conducting massive bombing raids on Iranian cities for carpet bombing their cities. And if the reports are true, there's 2 Marine battalions and 1,000 U.S. airborne troops that are en route to the Middle East, and apparently some are supposed to arrive tonight or tomorrow.
Have you heard anything?
Added another 10,000 troops. And if they invade, they will be massacred. This is not going to be, it's really insane. I mean, every military expert I've listened to has just gone up, talked about how this might be like Gallipoli in World War I. If the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, if they support this U.S. invasion, Iran has promised to destroy their oil refineries and liquid natural gas production. I mean, it would wipe out all the petroleum products that are coming out of the Gulf. And I think if it goes that far, then they will also hit the desalination plants. And Israel and the Gulf states are highly dependent on this for water. They could not support their populations there if this continues. So I hope to God this doesn't transpire.
And this is one of the problems that only Israel and the Gulf states have, because Iran doesn't depend on desalination.
Yeah, only about 4% of the water comes from desalination.
Israel depends on it for how much of its water?
80%.
80. That's
and the others are like 70, 80, 90%, so it's just, they become uninhabitable. I mean, they're in the desert there,
Yeah, but that for the Gulf states, that would be immediately the death of tens of thousands of people if they cannot be evacuated or water cannot be blown.
Armageddon's. So where are we? This diagram shows, the large solid red line shows where the traffic with the normal shipping lanes. But it's being routed between two islands. That's Keshem Island and Larak Island. I don't know if I may not pronounce it exactly right, but you can see there's a narrow, it's like a toll gate they've created basically. Iran never charged anything for boats to go through the straits. Well, now that's changed. I mean, they charge to go through the Suez Canal, the Panama Canal. So this is not something that's unheard of in the world. And they haven't mined the strait as far as I know, although someone has suggested that they could actually have put mines on the bottom of the sea, of the strait there. I don't know. But will the Marines attempt to take these two islands? Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates have been using pipelines to ship oil to outside the Strait of Hormuz. You can see in the middle there's a green pipeline, and that's where the bulk of the oil is coming from. UAE's got a pipeline down here. And the Saudi pipeline offloads at Yanbu in the Red Sea. This oil has replaced about 40% of the oil that formerly came through the Persian Gulf. So it has attenuated it. Up above there, at the top of there, the Red Sea is where the Suez Canal is.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
but this is something that could be destroyed. This is something that Iran could target if they wish to.
Well, yes, and in addition to that, if you look down at the bottom there of the Red Sea, that's where Yemen is and the Houthis. And if they decide to block off that strait, the very large crude carriers won't be able to get through there. Because they can't go through the Suez Canal. They have to exit the Red Sea by passing Yemen.
Right.
And I'm sure that this will transpire if the hostilities continue. So where are the possible sites of a U.S. ground invasion of Iran? They've heard about Karg Island. That's where Iran offloads almost all of its oil into the Persian Gulf. And the U.S. has hit the military bases there, but they haven't targeted the oil refineries. You can see that up there, the red circle. And we were looking at the Strait of Hormuz a minute ago with Larak Island and Keshem Island. And there's also a port city called Chabahar that's been talked about as a place where the Marines might try to land. And there's also some small islands that Ambassador Freeman's brought this up a couple times. I greatly respect him. So they're called the Lesser Tomb Islands, I believe, and they're in the center here. So I'm not sure what value they would be, but all these islands are in range of Iranian artillery, missiles, and drones. If you look at the topographical map here of the coastline, look at it's all completely mountainous. Can you imagine trying to land a force on this, and you'd be looking up at the cliffs, and all these cliffs oversee these islands? I mean, modern artillery can go many miles. You don't have to have a missile to target these islands, and if anybody landed on them, they would just be, I'm afraid, to be massacred. The U.S. has twice attacked the Iranian nuclear power plant at Bushehr. Now, this is a commercial nuclear power plant, unlike the one at Damona that Israel has. This one has this has probably at least 10 times, maybe 100 times more nuclear material. It's got 71 tons of fissile material in the reactor, and it also has 210 tons of highly radioactive uranium fuel rods. They call it spent fuel. And these spent fuel pools have some of the highest concentrations of radioactivity on the planet. After the U.S. attacked the Iranian reactor, Iranian hypersonic missiles, retaliated, they struck right next to the Israel's Dimona reactor.
Whoa. Whoa. Wow. Abba.
They didn't strike the reactor itself, but they could. They have the capability. They're very highly accurate. This is a warning, essentially.
So they made sure they didn't hit it. Yeah.
Right.
But they were right next to it.
Right. That they could hit it if they want to. So a ballistic missile will wreck that. So what will the U.S. and Israel do if they face a huge defeat by Iran? If we land troops there, they get massacred, or I think to prevent a catastrophic defeat, the U.S. or Israel may choose to use nuclear weapons against Iran. I mean, they're both nuclear powers. Israel has probably 300 or 400 nuclear weapons. They have Tomahawk missiles with nuclear warheads on 5 diesel submarines. They have, we have to ask, what will Russia do? Would they intervene if a nuclear attack is launched against Iran? Because Iran's right on the Russian border. And worst of all, the most likely possibility is if Israel used nuclear weapons on Iran, Iran will build and use nuclear weapons against Israel. And Dr. Theodore Postel has done some really good presentations on this. And I used some of his slides. He gave me permission to. He created one that shows 3 Iranian atomic bombs. They can produce about 9 to 10 of these 15 kiloton weapons with the highly enriched uranium that we know they have. And this would kill 300 to 400,000 people. Now, this diagram shows a nuclear fireball at the instant of detonation. The fireballs are as hot, they're like a piece of the sun coming to the earth. And the surface of the fireball is hotter than the surface of the sun. It's much hotter than conventional explosives. This is a picture from Hiroshima. There was someone that was beneath the fireball there. They were vaporized. They just left a shadow on the sidewalk. This image is a few seconds after the detonation. It shows mushroom clouds rising, and the solar heat from these fireballs will create a huge nuclear firestorm. It ignites innumerable fires all around, and that the circle there, it's like 30 square kilometers. And this firestorm is deadly to anything that's alive there. It creates a firestorm where within tens of minutes, the air temperatures in the fire zone rises above the boiling point of water. The updrafts are hundreds of miles an hour, and they create winds coming into the fire zone that are powerful enough to uproot trees like 3 feet in diameter. They're just enormous. So no one in this fire zone would survive. And this would be the same thing in Iran as it would be in Israel. But
And I think it's important to say here that Professor Postel says that from what we know about Iran and how much enriched uranium they have, we must suppose that they are able to put that into action within a couple of weeks. I mean, that was his assessment already last year. It's just it would be irresponsible to assume that they do not have already a couple of nuclear warheads. That was his argument.
Well, that's right. He believes 9 or 10. They had about 430 kilograms of 60% highly enriched uranium, and that's enough. It only takes several days to go from a 60% to 90% enrichment, which is weapons grade. And these fission bombs are not particularly difficult to produce. It doesn't. They don't have to test them to know they will work. Iran is completely capable of creating these warheads. So this image shows where the fire zone would be, and everything combustible in zone will burn in about 6 to 10 hours. This is an image of Hiroshima a few months after the atomic bomb there destroyed the city. The U.S. actually created firestorms in Germany and Japan during World War II with conventional bombing, with thousands of bombers creating enormous fires. This is a picture of Hamburg afterwards that shows abandoned fire trucks in the street. It's so hot in the city there that you wouldn't be able to take a tracked vehicle in for days. Even the asphalt, everything is so hot that you can't enter it. After the bomb, of course, there's going to be radioactive fallout. In Hiroshima, there was an area of black rain, and Dr. Postel believes that there would be a similar phenomena here in Tel Aviv. That's highly radioactive. So, probably 100,000 people died from the fallout from that in Japan. And radiation is not a good way to die from acute radiation exposure. So, I believe that any further escalation of this war will lead to disaster for everyone. It's an all-out war will result if the U.S. attacks Iranian energy infrastructure or sends troops into Iran. The U.S. will consider using nuclear weapons to forestall a massive defeat in the Persian Gulf. I think Trump would. I mean, if he's faced with U.S. troops being slaughtered and ships being sunk, do you think he'll just retreat? I don't believe that's Trump's style. And if Israel's cities are being blasted to bits by Iranian missiles, at some point, I believe they call it the Samson option. I believe Samson, pulled down the temple on him and destroyed everyone with him. The Philistines. If the energy infrastructure and desalination plants in Israel and the Gulf states are destroyed, they'll make it uninhabitable. And as I said, I believe Israel is likely to attack Iran with nuclear weapons if Israel decides its existence is at stake. So stop the war now. That's why I say if there's someone sane that can intervene in this process and convince Trump not to send the troops into Iran, don't attack. If we go ahead with this ground attack, it's going to result in a catastrophe. So.
Hey, very brief intermission because I was recently banned from YouTube, and although I'm back, this can happen anytime again. So please consider subscribing not only here, but to my mailing list on Substack. That's pascalotta.substack.com. The link's going to be in the description below, and now back to the video. Thank you for this overview. This is very, very important to just be aware of where we are standing now. But what is the mood at the moment in the United States? I mean, you're in Missouri. I mean, in your neighborhood, when you talk to people, I mean, what do they say about this? What do we know about the statistics on it? I mean, we know that CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Committee, just had their meeting this weekend, and they were discussing apparently whether this war was a good thing or a bad thing. Where does the U.S. stand on the war?
Well, I believe most normal people, the people that are struggling to feed their families and take care of their own lives, are not in favor of endless war. I think that's the reason why Trump was elected. Actually, he pledged to end foreign wars, and look at what he's done. So I mean, I don't know if I can speak for the United States or not. What I see is the politicians they're all for it. But we have AIPAC here. I mean, every congressman has a representative from AIPAC in their office. That's why when Netanyahu comes and gives a speech, he gets standing ovations because we've got the best Congress that money can buy.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think Trump really. Well, I don't know. I can't speak for Trump. I honestly question his sanity at this point. But I think he's panicking. That's what I see. His rants and stuff are becoming more and more disconnected from reality almost. But what information is he getting? He's surrounded himself with these Christian Zionists who, they've handpicked the people to report to them. A lot of them are yes men. I listened to Ray McGovern and Larry Johnson talk about all the bad intel that goes up to the White House because they structured the analysts to be yes men. So, and Trump apparently doesn't like to read. So he watches highlights of bombing runs that are shown to them in his briefings. So he may be convinced that the U.S. is winning the war. I mean, it really is disconcerting to think that the president is getting completely false information and believes that he can send in troops and win the war and make Iran stand down, because Iran has a 1 million-man standing army. And what are 10,000 troops? In World War I, they had the Battle of Gallipoli, where 500,000 Allied troops, 489,000 that were sent there, British, French, Australians, New Zealanders. They landed on the shores they were being overlooked by cliffs there because the British tried to go through the Dardanelles and it was mined. Their ship were sunk, so they decided to try an invasion. Sounds familiar, right?
Yeah.
And they lost 125,000 killed and wounded, and finally had to retreat. We're going to send 10,000 men in. Do you think that's going to do any good? They didn't have missiles back then.
No, it's just I wonder if this can be true. I mean, the whole talk. I mean, one of the possible interpretations is, of course, this whole ground invasion stuff is just a diversion,
psyop.
right?
Yeah.
A psyop in order to also a psyop against us, right? So that the commentary.
Yeah, I think the only
If I-
effective
this
audience
insanity in-
from this would be the Western audiences that only are fed propaganda through the mainstream media. Because the Iranians aren't going to be worried about it. They're saying, yeah, bring them on in.
They are. I mean, Professor Marandi on my channel, he said that. Look, we are prepared for this. I mean, we're prepared to kill them all. No problem. Or if you really want to do that, then send them over. Sure, we'll take care.
I don't want to see American servicemen butchered over there. What it's a city, But what have we been doing? We've been carpet bombing their cities. We began this war of aggression by killing their Ayatollah and his family. And the new Ayatollah is the son of the Ayatollah. The new Ayatollah lost his daughter and his wife. I don't think he's in the mood. I think he's likely to say, yeah, go ahead and build those nuclear weapons. Because his father had blocked it for 26 years. And that's the man he killed.
Yeah, and what you showed to us, these the underground cities. I mean, whether those pictures are the actual ones or not. I mean, this is also what Professor Marandi speaks about, that they have these kind of underground cities, and it took the United States a very daring operation in order to bomb just one of them, right? And we know that this one strike wasn't able to actually destroy the nuclear fuel that was there. So this is just something that is out of the reach of the United States. And
those facilities you're talking about, Natanz and Fordo, they're actually not missile cities, but they're nuclear facilities where they have where they refine uranium. They have cascades of centrifuges, but it's similar in the sense that they're all mined. Iran is made of granite, and granite's 25 times stronger than concrete. That's why. So right. I don't know. I'm some guy in Missouri that's trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, but we are currently, all of us are trying to guess where this is going, because we also mainly try to figure out what kind of information does the White House have, and at which point might the Congress finally get its act together and finally say, like, wait a minute, we are responsible too here. Are you hearing anything about this one?
Well, let me just say, I can say that I don't know, but what I have done is I've done a lot of research, and these videos of the missile cities and the pictures have been out for years. But they weren't just all manufactured last week by AI. What I don't understand is why would this not considered? Why would American soldiers be left on bases with not even adequate shelters?
Yes. This is maybe one of the most shocking insights, that they do not have shelters in the Gulf states where they're stationed.
In other words, it's a picture of utter incompetence from the top to the bottom, and the U.S. is hardly in a position to attack anyone. Iran is like a fortress state. That's the last place anyone should want to attack, because the Iranians they will not surrender, and they will fight to the last man at this point. So anyway, I didn't mean to avoid your previous question, but the information is out there if you want. There's videos on Iranian drilling machines.
Yes.
There's a lot of things that it's not that hard to figure out that Iran is. They knew that they were going to face this war again, and that's why they were preparing for it, and they did it very scientifically and methodically.
No, they did, and we know that they're prepared, and they've said they're prepared. They've said that they've got that. and they've now proven that they're able to shoot. I mean, are you, because I lost count, did you stay on top of how the fire exchange, about how many missiles are being traded each day, and if we see a change in these numbers?
Yes, at the beginning of the war, there was a large exchange on both sides, and part of that was primarily to try to identify and destroy air defense systems. And Iran is pretty effective at destroying the radar, which has blinded a lot of the U.S. and Israeli. But the exchanges died down considerably. Now, can get numbers from CENTCOM, the U.S. military figures, and they show a progressive decrease. But what's happening now is that the strikes appear to be increasing. Iran used its older missiles at first, and now it's the missiles that are being brought out now are newer missiles that use different launchers. They have much larger warheads. They have 1 to 2 ton warheads, apparently. At least a 2,000 pounds of high explosive is a massive destruction, and they can target these very precisely. Now, Israel has got incredibly, if you put any video on the internet, you're going to be put in prison in Israel. So that's why we're not seeing any videos coming out of Israel. But I did see a video of a mayor of a city in the West Bank saying, "You've got to stop this. We can't survive this. We have no defense against Hezbollah is hitting them with missiles too." So I think Israel is besieged right now, and this war was supposed to be a short war. I mean, the fools in the White House apparently believed they could, in one weekend, kill the Ayatollah and have regime change, and all the Iranians were going to revolt, and we were going to live happily ever after.
Yeah, but
And now the goal is to open the Strait of Hormuz. Well, it was open before the war, right? We closed.
yeah, exactly. It was open and it was free and it was safe and it was fine. But if the analysis that actually AIPAC is one of the drivers of this war, and the wishes of Tel Aviv are basically the commands in Washington. Let's just suppose that is true. If it's the case, then the question is not like how to convince the United States, but how to convince Tel Aviv to order Washington to stand down. But if we suppose that, then the Iranians said the only way they would be willing to stop shooting is if the U.S. completely withdraws from West Asia. All the bases must be gone. They must pay reparations, or the Gulf states pay reparations, and the Iranian allies, Hezbollah and so on, must be part of the political outcome of the deal, and
no more genocide of the Palestinians.
and stop the genocide, of course.
Right.
And all of this, to me, still seems something that is basically embedded in Zionism itself, right? This would
Right.
actually attack the core of the Zionist political ideology. Therefore, they will. I guess the Israelis have maneuvered themselves into a corner from which there is now no coming out. So I don't see a way in which Iran or Tel Aviv could convince the other one, would convince the other one to stop. Therefore, this will probably continue.
I completely agree with you. I mean, this is an existential struggle for both states at this point, but it's only existential for Israel because they made enemies of all their neighbors that committed genocide against the Palestinians, and they initiated an aggressive war against Iran. And not for the first time, actually. We had the attack in June of last year, and Iran showed at that time that its missiles could penetrate the so-called Iron Dome. I had videos of that. I think I showed one on your show before, and
Yeah.
now why did that not get through to Washington? I mean, what the hell are those people doing there? Are they
Last June or July during the 12-day war, I mean, it was utterly clear. Iran made it crystal clear. Our missiles can penetrate your stupid dome thingy and your David Sling thingy, and we can get at your throat if we want to, but we don't want to. So stop making us want to. And then look at what they did. I mean, now you made us want to actually strike you where it really hurts, even at the cost of like very high costs at home. So in a sense, I mean, one of the possible outcomes of this, actually, I believe at this point, is regime change in Tel Aviv, because
right?
you would need a political change, a fundamental political change.
Or hope for it. Um, You know, there's other views on this that say that the whole plan has been to destroy the Gulf and wreck the Strait of Hormuz. Brian Berletic and stuff believe they don't say it's Israel. They say it's the United States driving this. We can look at the U.S. It's at this point it's somewhat more or less self-sufficient with petroleum, although fracking is utterly short term. Those wells are going to dry up post haze. But the people in Washington, maybe they believe that if they can, they burn down the rest of the world, then we're still everybody runs out of gas and oil, but us. So it's like after World War II, all the nations were laid waste by the war except the United States because we had the two oceans protecting us, and we were number one for a long time.
I asked this yesterday. I asked Chas Freeman about it. The video has been out for a couple of hours, and he says actually that he doesn't believe that interpretation. He thinks this is a rationalization of the outcome that we're seeing, but the motives behind it, he doesn't see it as this kind of grand strategic 4D chess move, more as an outcome of a very unhealthy process of trying to actually deal with Iran. And of course, the idea, deal with them first and then go again against Russia, and then finally the final boss, China, right? This video game mentality. But yeah, because actually he also made the point, China is, there's actually benefits coming out of this for China. For instance, that its entire renewable energy sector, which is the largest in the world, it's going to get a huge boom from this, right?
Russia's doing well with the oil prices too.
Russia's doing well with the oil prices. I mean, there's other knock-on effects of other people benefiting from this.
I think someone made the point that they shot them. We had the sanctions against Russia and Iran. Well, Trump lifted those so they could buy oil after the Gulf.
The oil sanctions against the Iranian oil are currently lifted.
Yeah,
the United States want the price to go higher.
Feed you. It's like Alice. It's through the looking glass, Alice in Wonderland stuff. It really is. That's why nothing makes sense. You would send 10,000 troops to invade Iran. Nothing makes sense. But we see this all progressing like a bad science fiction movie, and it's hard to, it's very frustrating to people that want to see peace on Earth.
Yeah, it's extremely frustrating. But at the same time, what we are seeing now is that for the first time, the United States seems to be running into a real kind of brick wall. The first time since running into the North Korean brick wall. But even in North Korea, the North Koreans were basically forced to fight guerrilla warfare in the jungles and so on, asymmetric war. But this is a symmetric war, and this is the first time since the Second World War the United States has to fight a symmetric war.
Dr.
Maybe the Korean War.
Yeah, well, Dr. Postal has been trying to make the point for a couple of decades now that the U.S. air defense systems are a fraud. Right. And we saw that they were ineffective in Ukraine. And now we see, they certainly weren't able to protect the U.S. bases, were they? Not at all. I mean, they've laid waste. They've driven the United States out of every military base around the Gulf. I mean, and that message hasn't gotten through to the American public, I don't believe.
No, but it seems that they really believe that, right? I mean, if you do
that's propaganda.
No, but if you don't believe, if you do not build bunkers for your troops at very close range of one of the prime adversaries, that means you actually trust that your systems will got this, right? So they really believed it, and now we've learned that something that was really believed in the military is actually turning out to be a fiction.
That's an excellent point. I hadn't thought of that, but apparently that was the case. And there's probably hundreds of American dead right now. They're not, they're going to cover everything up. But we see this in every war. Even in World War I and World War II, the Americans government lied to its people about casualties that were being incurred in some of the different battles. Battle of the Bulge, for example. Those are horrendous American losses, but we never heard about it here.
Right.
And I think there's been a lot of people, a lot of American servicemen have been killed and wounded already. But nothing compared to what's going to happen if they send troops in to invade islands or the mainland.
So we have basically at this point, as we speak on this 28th of March, my time, 27th in the evening, yours, the situation where we're waiting for these two massive there's three massive escalations that can happen, right? The first one would be going after desalination plants, or let's put it this way: Israel going after something in Iran that is so critical that Iran would decide to strike desalination. Then the troop invasion, that's the ground invasion, that's the other massive escalation, and the third one would of course be the nuclear escalation. And that's not to say that this is a hierarchy. But this is probably the three largest things that could still potentially happen that would kill thousands, 10,000, or hundreds of thousands.
Well, Iran warned that it would go after the refineries in the Gulf if the attacks continued on its infrastructure. For example, if the U.S. took out the Karg Island, because that's where they offload all their oil into the Persian Gulf. So that can be, that could even be something that Israel could go after if they wanted to provoke a full-scale attack.
That is true. That is true. That's the problem. Israel has the United States basically by the crown jewels, right? Because they can hit something in Iran that then forces Iran to fire at something very valuable for the U.S. and the U.S. will just be hurt. Just be hurt.
It shows you how foolish American leadership has been to maneuver itself into this sort of situation. I mean, in a sane world, we wouldn't even come close to something like this. But the people have said over and over, when it comes down to choosing between U.S. and Israeli interests, the U.S. seems to always choose the Israeli interests in these sort of situations. But I don't think it's in Israel's interest to have any further escalation in this war, because if they don't back down, then they're going to use the Samson option, and it'll be a biblical Armageddon scenario. And I hope not, but I don't see anything stopping it right now.
No, that's the problem. I mean, Mr. Netanyahu is still giving press conferences and talking about how so well everything is going. I don't know. I've seen now recently again press conferences from like different angles. I think that was just wishful thinking. That we hoped he was gone, but again,
And it's sad when you're hoping somebody would drop dead, but I think there's a lot of people in a couple of different countries wishing that right now. So.
Yeah. Let me put it this way. I don't wish death on anyone, but there's some people who, if they did a little bit less violent living around, would not hurt.
They need to retire, at least from
retirement, just retirement, preferably in prison, but it could also be in their mansion. I don't care. Just retire and stop killing people. But the Israelis are still trying to portray that this is going well, although one of the logical deductions is you have to
spending every night in shelters right now, and I've heard they continue this.
If you have to put people in prison who just make videos of what's happening around them, that stuff isn't going very fine. But it seems that they are under control. I mean, the military got also internally the control over the population, apparently, or the population is still on board with this.
Well, technology allows governments to really surveil and control their populations very effectively these days. And, I worry about that in the future. I don't like all these damn drones. I worry about someday one might be sent out to visit me. But, we have to worry about AI and all this military technology. I mean, we have the capacity to make the earth a paradise, to eliminate hunger, poverty, to explore the universe. I mean, I sound like an episode from Star Trek, right? But we do. We finally reach a point in human history where we have the ability to make life great for everyone. But instead, all the money's going into killing and war because it's profitable and control, and it's just if we can't escape this mindset, we're gonna doom ourselves. But
of course
it's still possible to avoid war and destruction if we choose to.
Yeah, and I keep thinking a lot of the very optimistic pictures of the future actually come out of the United States. I mean, Star Trek is a prime example. The way Star Trek society as a society works is very utopian. It's like food out of thin air, and everybody lives basically in there's still hierarchies, but you don't do things for money. You actually already you are at peace at home. You can go out, you can explore, you can see the universe. It's a utopian vision of the future.
Yeah, you see the cities where there's not only different races from Earth, but from all over the galaxy. And I mean, we did reach a point here where people were seemingly against racism as a culture. We elected a black president, and I was pretty hopeful way back when, thinking, "Wow, we've really gone a long way when white farmers in Iowa will vote for a black man for president." That was a change here. But now people don't seem to realize that hating Russians is racism.
Yeah.
It's just like
It's a very good point.
World War II or the Krauts or whatever, who we have made peace with, although they seem to be our vassals. But yeah, I don't know. If you use technology to brainwash people instead of educate them, then you wind up with big problems.
You do, and we are in the middle of very big problems. But maybe just to close this off, Steve, like, what are the things that you are looking out for when you try to make sense of this war? Where are you going in order to do your research?
Well, I come to your podcast.
Oh, well.
I also go to Larry Johnson and oh gosh, Nima, I think's great. The Duran, and both the guys on there, Alex and Alexander, have their own podcasts. I mean, I have to go to that alternative media. I still take everything with a grain of sand because
Sold, I hope.
And Judge Napolitano, of course, he's got people that
Okay.
and I haven't talked about what's going on in Ukraine, but there's still the British are now have their Navy intercepting Russian ships in the Baltic, along with the Baltic states. Estonia made it illegal. So there's a lot of bad things going on. The drones are still hitting Russia. And, the United States is controlling those attacks from Germany. This is, we say the Ukrainians are doing, but we provide all the targeting information and probably the material. So there's that's out there too. I mean, we're really in trouble in a lot of ways right now because we got warmongers running the show.
We do. We do, but
need to step away from all that. But anyway, I didn't mean to digress. I like to go to the different podcasts to.
No, it's just we are also at the point where it's social media is actually still a lifeline to a sane discussion about the insanity that's going on.
And it can go viral too, So everyone watching this should send this link to your friends and family.
like and subscribe. But no, the point is that we have no other choice but trying to make sense of this ourselves, right? Because we cannot trust CNN or BBC or MSNBC, all of these things, and the New York Times and so on. We must read them in order to understand what they're saying and how they want to portray the world. But then we must have a sane discussion among us in order to figure out what is actually going on. And I just want to make this point. There's differences of interpretation between people like Brian Berletic and Jas Freeman, but that doesn't mean that one or the other wants to deceive. That just means that we have these different interpretations and we need to discuss them in order to kind of figure out which one is the most likely or which combination of what is the most likely. Yeah.
Well, I've been trained as a scientist. I ran a clinical laboratory science program for 11 years before I taught my class on nuclear weapons. And, I believe in the scientific method, and you need to have discussion and experimentation, but you shouldn't be told what to select. That should be free choice. And if you believe in the human species enough, you can believe that we'll select the right thing to do. Yeah. So hopefully that'll happen someday.
And just also as a point for all of our listeners, the act of your own thinking nobody can replace that. And we all just must keep looking out and searching. And that's why I'm very grateful to you, Stephen, that you're sharing your insights and your analysis with us. People who want to follow you, where should they go?
Well, I have a website, nuclearfamine.org, nuclear famine, all one word. And I don't, I basically do my presentations on podcasts like yours now. I don't really have any monetary aspect to it, but I appreciate the chance to speak here. It's very gratifying to me.
Well, thank you very much for sharing on this podcast. We all appreciate it very much. We will have you back on again because unfortunately We cannot expect the war to end soon, but let's hope. Let's hope. Maybe a miracle happens. Maybe Donald Trump wakes up and just declares victory and goes home.
Well, he might be afraid enough that he's, if he's actually told what sort of defeat he's facing, maybe he will. I hope he does.
I hope at some point he watches our podcast. Well, Stephen,
Yeah.
thank you very much for your time today.
Okay, thank you.